Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In my previous overview video, I talked about what constitutions are, why they are important, and how they are connected to civic engagement. In this video, we are going to wrap up the second section of my civic engagement curriculum, Becoming the Changemaker, a guide to making positive change in society, by talking about the structure of the United States government, which is the fourth topic out of my 20 topics in my curriculum. By the end of this video, you will not only understand the federal, state, and local levels of government, but you also see why knowing this structure is key for civic engagement and making your voice heard. When I first studied the US government in high school, the focus was mainly on the three federal branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. That is important, of course, because they shape the national system. But as I got older, I realized that the way we talked about government often centers on the federal level, and even the national media mostly covers federal level politics. Meanwhile, I was not paying much attention to my state and local governments. At most, I knew they managed my state, city, and county by creating and executing laws on those levels. But I did not fully understand the complexity of how they create laws, distribute resources, or make decisions that directly affect my daily life. Keep in mind that the federal government cannot know every single detail about our lives. That is why it relies on state and local governments to meet community needs. The federal government sets general standards and policies, but state and local governments decide how those standards get executed in our neighborhoods. That means your state representative, mayor, school board, and other state and local officials are the people deciding how resources are distributed in your community. So, if you care about paved roads, public schools, public safety, or any other local issue or subject, your local officials are the first people to talk to. If funding or broad policy becomes an issue that requires cooperation from state and federal officials, then they can also step in. But the starting point is always local. Once I realized this, I started paying closer attention to my local government. When I did a podcast last year as the Civic Engagement Committee chairperson in my civil rights organization, I interviewed two individuals who were knowledgeable about my local common council and asked how they worked. I even attended and watched some council meetings to see how they worked. I noticed that my local government was like the federal government structure, but on a smaller scale. For example, my city's common council functions like a local legislative branch by creating laws, discussing them, and passing them for the city, as well as deciding on the city's budget. That gave me a real picture of how local government is structured and why it matters so much for civic engagement. It showed me that all levels of government need to cooperate with each other to ensure laws are properly created and executed and ensure resources are equitably given to their communities. So, to be civically engaged, we need to know how all levels of government function because it helps us figure out where we need to go to make specific change happen in society and who those government decision makers are. The United States operates on three main government levels in order. First is federal, which handles national concerns such as defense, foreign policy, and interstate commerce. Second is the state, which manages issues within state borders, such as education, transportation, and healthcare. Third is local, which covers the closest concerns to your communities, such as schools, roads, parks, zoning, and public safety. As you can see, each level of government has unique powers and responsibilities, and importantly, they all must work together. Let's break them down even more. At the federal level, there are three branches that are outlined in the US Constitution. The first, there is the legislative branch, which is Congress. This branch has two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives, where they create and pass laws, create and manage the federal government's budget and collect taxes, declare war, and oversee areas of federal policy. Second, there is the executive branch, which is the president, vice president, cabinet-level departments, and many federal agencies. This branch enforces laws, manages day-to-day federal government responsibilities, oversees and leads the military, represents U.S. foreign, domestic, and economic interests, and manages the people who work for the federal government. Third, there is the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court and lower federal courts. They interpret laws, rule on cases to see if laws or actions are constitutional or not, and resolve disputes between states. All three of these branches have checks and balances to make sure no single branch overpowers each other. For example, Congress can impeach a president, the president can veto laws, and the courts can strike down unconstitutional actions. At the state level, states mirror the federal system with their own governor, legislature, and courts. Governors are like their state's president by having the power to sign or veto state legislation, appoint officials, and manage the state's executive branch, including some electoral processes. State legislatures are similar to Congress by writing and passing laws for its state. They communicate with local governments to figure out how to distribute funding to them. State governments interpret state laws to see if they are constitutional or not. States also play a major role in their education, public health, transportation, and other state services, which impact us daily. The 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution says that any powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states. This means that the state and federal government have to work together on the powers they have for each other and are explicit on what they are allowed to do, so that the laws are adequately enforced and resources are properly distributed. Having these explicit measures keep things peaceful between states and the federal government. At the local level, it includes counties, cities, towns, and villages. Local governments are the most accessible level of government to the people and directly impacts their communities the most. A county government can be seen as a bridge between the state and governments within its county. It assesses and reassesses property values, collects taxes, constructs and maintains municipal buildings, manages official records, keeps roads and highways safe, and provides public assistance. A city government, as well as a town and village, make decisions about local schools, parks, roads, libraries, and ordinances. They can also keep the roads and infrastructure safe, manage local police, set zoning restrictions, etc. Local governments are where your voices can be heard most directly, whether through a city or town council meeting, a school board meeting, or even public comment sections at any of those meetings. Keep in mind that while the federal government is universal across the United States, state and local governments might have different levels of responsibilities and power in the communities they serve that do not always apply everywhere. The responsibilities and powers I listed about state and local governments are general information that apply in almost all circumstances, but I recommend you check your state and local constitutions to see what they constitutionally can and cannot do. This is because each state, city, towns, and villages have specific needs and operate in a certain way to get those needs. Still, when you know how these levels of government work, you know who to talk to about issues you care about and where to effectively push for change. Even better, once you know the structure, you can teach others so they know how it works. That is how communities build collective power, when everyone understands how the government works and how to navigate it. We have now approached the end of the second section of my curriculum. In the next video, we are moving into the third section on civic identities by exploring my fifth topic of civic personalities. This will help you figure out what type of role you want to be in society and how you can bring your unique strengths in creating positive change. Please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share this video so people know how the United States government works. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.